Mark, great to touch base with you, sir. I would love your view on what you think is happening with this relationship at the moment, not just in the United States, but across Europe right now, because we're living it.
Yeah, not good. The trend lines here don't look very good. We are seeing infections start to rise throughout much of Europe and increasingly throughout much of the United States. And the healthcare professionals obviously are warning us that given the colder weather, people going indoors, more likely to see more infections going forward. So the healthcare crisis, the pandemic rages on, and obviously the headwind to the economy is quite significant as a result.
It's worrying, Mark, because it's October 13th. It's not November. It's not December. It's not the depths of flu season. Here we are in October, staring down fall, and we're already looking at these issues. For you, Mark, the conversation on Wall Street is pretty simple. It's if we'll get a stimulus package, and overwhelmingly my guests say we will. For economists, it's more about the when and the substance of that package, and the longer we wait, the more damage we will do. Can you speak to that, Mark?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we've had the headwind of the pandemic, but we've had a very powerful tailwind from policy, both monetary policy. Obviously, global central banks have been very aggressive in responding to the crisis, and fiscal policy. Governments across the globe, here in the U.S., obviously in Europe, very aggressive response, all very good. But right now here in the U.S., we're debating how much and whether we should provide any more fiscal support, and I think that's a mistake in the context of the pandemic that's still raging. And the longer we wait to provide that support, that additional support, the more likely the economy, the recovery is going to stall out and even backtrack. So my sense is that if the administration and Congress can't get it together by December, January, we'll start to see some negative job numbers and rising unemployment. So very significant mistake here being made by policymakers. Fortunately, in Europe, governments obviously I'm painting with a broad brush, but broadly speaking, they're continuing to provide support, and that's clearly the right thing to do in the context of this ongoing pandemic.
Mark, just on the fiscal aid in the United States, one thing I'm still struggling to get my hands around is how much aid is still in the tank. We saw savings absolutely explode. Clearly, not all that money was spent over the last several months for much of this year. Mark, how much is left?
It's gone. It's largely, almost totally expired. I mean, all the supplemental unemployment insurance benefits, that expired back in July. The Paycheck Protection Program money for small businesses, that's gone. Of course, the stimulus checks, the bulk of that was sent out back in April and May. Now, you do still have people who have saved that money, but, generally those are higher income households that didn't need to spend it. It's the lower income households that blew through that stimulus money and don't really have anything in the tank, as you say.
Well, that's what I'm getting at, Mark, the consumers and how much money they've actually got left to spend. And I'm trying to understand from your perspective, we avoided an income shock becoming an income crisis and turning into a huge deleveraging process for many companies and the bankruptcies that could have been a whole lot worse. Do you think this time around the nature of the next dip, so to speak, if we don't get the stimulus, could be quite different?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think a lot of businesses were able to kind of sort of navigate through, piece it together with the PP money. Of course, consumers were able to hang in there to some degree because they got all that income support from the government. Now, this go around, particularly if the pandemic intensifies here and infections rise, and we have to go back to limiting business activity, it's going to be very difficult for these businesses to make it through. We'll see more business failure. And the scarring effects, as economists say, will be much more significant, make it much more difficult for the economy to get back on track and to get back to full employment on the other side of the pandemic. So you're absolutely right that the second time at this may not be nearly as graceful as the first go-around because we're just not getting that support.